All rulers know that at the root of every fear and anxiety is the idea of the unknown, like how we're supposed to feel about death. So, how fortunate that at the government's discretion, since it is the one source we are to listen to for all of our information regarding the virus, full of unbiased experts and professionals, that this virus is also so mysterious and unlike anything man has ever encountered before. And don't let them fool you about the Spanish influenza thing. They're just counting on people not to know true history, what really went on back then. So, at first, it could only affect the elderly and the immunocompromised. Then they see young people who can see through the scam and are going to beaches and going to bars. So the media has to change its approach so it can target that population as well. In the beginning, it could only exist in the cold. Yet, how strange that now it's midsummer and we're experiencing a reported spike. Their studies tell us that wearing a mask helps. And then the very same studies also say actually they're ineffective. They won't do anything. It's all just trying to scare us because this public enemy is nothing more than a revolving door which can mutate at will since it is only a portion of the grand plan. Whether this thing was made in a lab by one scientific government facility or another, since they're all on the same side, or it's purposefully being blown out of proportion. Either way, it is the same source that is to blame for all the repercussions. And when you think about it, how many years have doctors and nurses been to medical school, and how many courses on microbiology do they have to take? And yet, here government mandates, brand new guidelines come down, and everything has to change. As if doctors, healthcare workers, none of them know how to do their job. They don't know how to take care of virus and bacteria related patients. In reality, our managers are using the same tactic they used in 9/11 down to the Patriot Act, which was drafted and ready should that event ever occur. And what do you know? A 1,000-page bill was ready just before this outbreak spontaneously occurred as well. Although planes crashing into towers was an instant reaction, a false flag inside job to get us into a war, this crisis is a slower version that likewise has terrorists, each of us, because anyone can become a potential carrier of the virus. Beware, this is only the opening act. Just like in the beginning, in order to board a plane, you had to remove your shoes. You had to make sure you didn't have any bottles in your baggage because they could explode or something. Then you had to be willing to be subject to random searches. Right now, we are also in the opening phase with wearing a mask, so we can get used to being granted or denied access, like being able to go into a grocery store, being able to pump your own gas, unless the state says it's okay. So in the future, it'll be like, oh wait, have you been tested yet? Have you been microchipped? Have you been vaccinated? And both events were orchestrated ahead of time to take away our freedoms. And whenever someone can give you rights or give you freedoms, you're never free in the beginning, like to start with. So back to Assimilate. And I know this is going to be unpopular, but just as the elites give us our heroes, like the military, and then only to discard them when it suits their needs, after young men and women have been duped into thinking they're fighting for something that they're not, and just how doctors and nurses do generally care and want to help, the elites are going to use healthcare workers to con the populace. But for now, we are to assimilate and clap and put up signs and thank them for their service for being our new frontline heroes. Then we're going to be pressured into being so grateful to them and made to feel guilty if we don't take the vaccines that will come through them since they're part of the system that's all manipulated. And the media will make it seem like, oh, how dare you, you're not being a good citizen. I assure you that when the vaccine does come around, as if Big Pharma doesn't have it already, that the cure will be worse than the virus. And if you don't know all the harmful things that are pumped into these medical miracles, just like the huge regimens that are given to babies, including myself, like right when you're born, your body has to handle all these brand new injections. And I feel sorry for all those who enlist in the armed forces because they're told, oh, you got to travel, so you got to get all these vaccines too. Like, they don't know the lifelong ramifications that accompany this. So, the more we are meant to be part of the loyal population that accepts the word of propaganda, the more we will be afraid of each other, and our communities will fall under the guiding force, the state, and we'll no longer have strong human ties and connections. We won't be touching each other. We won't have face-to-face contact. Everything through the internet screens, until it'll get to the point where we'll be so afraid that we'll look over our shoulders when somebody coughs or sneezes. Like, anyway, the accompanying research today, the first one is a book called The Ego and His Own. It's by Max Stirner, and I really love older literature because the common sense that they had back then was so amazing compared to our mainstream mass education that we get today, that obviously has done a horrible job of raising practical adults to function in regular society. If you just read anything like by Rousseau, Emerson, Thoreau, a bunch of philosophy, like, you could just see the intelligence. It's right there. Anyway, this book is about self-ownership, and I'm not saying I agree with everything in it, but I'll just wait for this playing. I know we like to think ourselves so modern and everything before us was primitive, but again, I'm not saying I agree with everything in this book, but it's definitely the type of anarchy that I most align myself with. And if you don't know what anarchy is in its purest form, please don't trust the maligned, slandered, libel image that the mainstream media paints it as. And in my last book, I'm even going to go into what true anarchy is, and especially I'm going to hammer down on the banking system and this capitalistic world and how corrupted it is. And if you're unaware, just click on my first YouTube video about the Matrix and watch the documentary there. The next video, the accompanying videos for today, the first one is how to herd your tax cattle, and it just shows how this is all a game to the elites, the deep state, those who are behind the throne, and it also just shows how we're all corralled to do whatever they want. The next one video is by a YouTuber. I'm gonna introduce more in future videos, but it's called 10 Years Without a Job, and I just want you to start to get into your head, what if you really could be free, if you could be yourself, if you could be a part of a voluntary society that's away from the establishment. And I'll just end with this, that just like voting, how it keeps getting pounded into us, vote, 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 you can make a difference, you can change the world. Very obvious and truthful things, they don't need that much work put into it. So they're obviously doing this for a reason, to take away our time and energy. And if you don't know what majority rule actually is, I talk about it a lot in my books. I know democracy is meant to seem like this great thing, but so again, they're pounding in, we're in this together, we're in this together. This new normal that we're all made to live by, the ruling class is not in it with us. They will always be above it and will always have all of us abide by it and all of us assimilate. So I just hope the day comes soon when we can be made aware so we won't have to keep living this way.